Today we'll explore data tables within NoCode-X. The UI element data table actually allows you to visualize a large set of data towards your users. Your users will be able to filter the data, they will be able to sort the data, browse through the data with pages, and even interact with the data. So let us explore deeply. Let's deep dive into the UI element data table within NoCode-X, and let's see what you can do with this data table by leveraging actions. So let's start. So here I have my basic page. And let's just start by creating the default layout for my page. So I add a horizontal list and let us add it to 100% width and 100% height. That's the first thing. And then let's position it in the top left corner like this. Voila, that's the start. Now let's add a vertical list to this horizontal list. Let's also delete any styling that this horizontal list has. We'll keep the styling of the vertical list. And then let's add our main player in this scenario, the data table. So let's add it next to the vertical list like this. Let's make the data table fit with regards to height, fit to the content, and let's make it like 300 pixels wide for each screen. And then let's make it grow with regards to width. So what we actually do with this is we say, okay, if there's any space remaining in the parent being the horizontal list, you can take up all the space. So we say it should grow. So that's our main setup right here. Let's see how that looks. So as you can see, we have our vertical list right here, and we have our data table right here. It has two columns, and it has some data in it, some default data. And if we hover over the rows, they are being the background will change, and we also have the cursor also changes into a little hand, suggesting that I will be able to click on this row right here. So let's dive into it a little bit further. So if we open up data table right here, we can see that we have a list of columns. So I can add columns, I can change a column name, and even change the content type of a column. So let's get rid of these columns right here. And let's start with first name. And the column name is first name right here. And then let's start with last name right here. So that's a good beginning. And now, as you can see, I have two rows, and first name and last name is not filled in for those rows. So let's maybe add one here, and let's add another. Voila. So I have two rows, static data, and then I can choose to switch on the filter. So I can switch it on like here, and maybe I can choose another label for my filter. As you can see, there is a field that appears here. So we'll be trying that out in a second. I can enable paging, and let's say the default amounts of items are 10 per page. So that's fine. And then a no results message, no persons were found. Something like this. So yeah, let's try this out. Let's see how this looks. Let's refresh this page right here. So as you can see now, we have a search bar. We have paging, but there are only two results. So they're showing 2 of 2. That's simple. I can search, and this will be filtered. So as you can see, the second person is not longer in here. And if I can't find a person now, I get the notification that no persons were found. So yeah, this seems to have worked. So let's see what else that we can do. We can also, per column, we can enable sort. So let us enable it for both columns. And we can actually make sure that one column is hidden. So let us add another column to this. Let's call this ID, and that will be a hidden column. So, and that will be something that we can use later on. So I'm just going to put it as the first column, but as you can see, this column is hidden. It's not being showed anywhere here, and it will not be shown anywhere here. Now that I enabled sorting, so as you can see, you can sort your table or you can sort it on last name, but that's the last names are the same in this case. So yeah, that's what we can do. That's the basic setup of the data table. Also, you have quite a lot of styling options. So you can change the overflow, change the border. There is a default border on here, which it takes from your design system, the alternate color, and it by default sets a small border with a radius on the data table. You can add some padding if you want. I'm not going to do that, but you can play around with it. You can change the background color if you want, add some shadow, change the cursor again, and then playing around with fonts and stuff like that. So you have quite a lot of possibilities to make this data table your own. So let's first start by trying to manipulate the data table from a certain action. So first of all, that's why I have my vertical list. So I can start adding buttons to my vertical list. So let's call this button add column. And let's call this button right here enable filter. Or yeah, let's keep it at enable filter. Let's call this button here disable filter. And let's add here enable paging. Let's add this one here, disable paging, like this. Okay, and let's start with add column. So let's just dynamically add a column to this data table. So first of all, let's find data table functions. So I have quite some to choose from. And so the one that I wanted is add a column to this data table. So let's drag and drop this into place. Let's choose our data table. And now the idea is that I provide some information on the column that I want to add. So let's make this email. The label is email, of course, and I want it to be visible, of course. So let us try and add this. I reload this page. If I click an add column, as you can see, a new column appears, but it has no data because, well, yeah, because the data that I've added is static and it had no email data, but we'll be fixing that later. So first of all, that's fine. That works. You can dynamically add columns to a data table. Fantastic. So let's now dynamically enable filtering on a data table. So for example, I find here enable the filter of data table. Use this one, choose my data table, and that's actually it. So this dynamically enables the filter on a data table. Let's also implement the disable filter. Let's quickly do this. So I'll just use disable filter of data table. Voila. So that's that. This should disable the filter. Let's also enable the paging. Voila. Enable paging for data table. And then choose which data table I want to enable the paging for. And then last but not least, let us also disable the paging. Voila, like this. I just disable the paging and then I choose which data table that I want to disable the paging for. So let's see how that worked out. So first of all, I already have a filter enabled, so I'm gonna have to disable it first. And as you can see, the filter is removed immediately. And now I can hit the enable button to just bring it back. So that's that. So I can switch on. And of course, guys, I did this with buttons right here, but you can do it any way you want. If you want to add a slide toggle, or even if you want to build up your data table dynamically when loading the page, this is all possible. Again, the same with paging. I click disable paging, the paging is gone. I click enable paging, paging is back. Disable, gone, paging back, like this. So let's do something else here. Let us try and add a little bit of data to the column that we dynamically added. So let's grab this add column action right here. So this one is the one that adds the email column. And let's, for this column, for a certain row, let us add an email address. So let's search here data table again. And what I want to find is assign a data to a data table column. So that's what I need. And this is really specifically assigning a piece of data for a certain row for a certain column. So actually filling up a cell of your data table. So let us select the data table first. The column's code, the column's unique code that I have selected here is the one that I should use. And then I need the unique code of the row. So let us check what the code of one of the rows was. And I think, voila, it's row ID right here. So let us take this one. It was this action that I was actually, I should name my actions better. So row _1. And the value is actually Tristan van Poeken at codex.eu. Like this. So let's see if that worked. So now if I add a column, it should also add data for that certain column. So as you can see, I now have an extra column and I have that data. I can do the same for the second row. So let's try this. I choose my data table. The column name is not row, is email. The row code is row _2. And the email address is morris@codex.eu. Like this. So let's reload this page, add a column. And as you can see, I now have 2 email addresses. So that allows you to actually build up a data table dynamically. You can start with an empty data table and start adding columns and then start adding rows. Now, there's an easier way, of course, than doing this. We can actually fill up the data table with rows. So let's do that. So first of all, let us create a person database. So create a data format for persons. it should include a name, excuse me, a first name and a last name. That's an email address. Let's add this. This is fine. So let's create this database right here. Voila. First name, last name, email, hit save. That's my database. And now let's fill it up with some testing data. So I'll just select the data format that I just created. Create 10 persons for me. Do it. So while the test data is being created, let's start and let's actually clean up our database or our data table first. So we remove all the rows, and I'm just gonna add the email row, which we have dynamically created in the past. I'm just gonna add it statically for now, like this. And it is visible, and sort may be enabled like this. So I have no rows. I do have a filter, and let's see, we still have no, they're still creating the testing data. So let us see in a second. Voila, now we have 10 persons, and I might need a little bit more. So I'm gonna ask more persons. Create 10 more persons. Like that, so I have a nice testing data set. Let's see if the data that was created are actually okay. John Doe, that's a typical one. Dave Miller, all right, that looks okay. So that's good data for me to test with. So let's first of all add an action to the onload part of the template, which will actually execute when the template or the page is being loaded. So we can actually fill up the data table and then show the loaded data table to the user. So let's do that like this. Let's call this initialize data table. The first thing that we want to do is actually fetch the data from our database. So we actually fetch a list of data records. Just like this, boom. We can choose person, we can choose a page. I'm just gonna choose page 0. I want to fetch all the data from my database, so I put in a high amount in here. And then I can start filtering as well. I do not need any filters, but if you need, for example, to filter on a certain attribute of persons, you can use this. I can also filter with an OR relationship between the filters. And I can choose here which attributes that I want to fetch from the database. If I leave this empty, I will just fetch all of them. So for this case, I will fetch all of them. And maybe I do want a sort. So well, let's add a sort in here. And let's say we want to sort this by default on first name. And we want to do it ascending, for example. So let's call this found persons, like this. Let's write out everything that we find to the application log, just to make sure that we found what we're looking for. So found the persons in application log right here. And then we'll actually have to loop over each item that we found in the database. And for each item that we found, we will add a row to the data table. So let's do that. We have a loop for and for each. The best thing to use in this case is a for each, because in a for, I could do it with a for. A for you have to define an index, and then you have to define a starting point for that index and an ending point for that index. And in a for each, you just loop over each and every item of a list, and you do something with it. There's a small difference. In many cases, you'll have enough with the for each. In some cases, you'll want the for. So let's use as a list that we want to iterate over. So as a list that we want to do something for each and every item of that list, we want to select the found persons page. And we don't want to impose a limit, because when we impose a limit, for example, I can say here 10. I can put in 10 as a limit, which actually means that it will only iterate over the 10 first items of this list. I don't want that. I want to iterate over each and every item of this list. Now I'll have to choose an item name, which is a name that I will assign each item to. So this is very important. You can see it right now. So I also want to create a new action which has to be executed for every single item in the list. So let's do this. So add person to data table. That's actually what I want to do. What I want to do for each and every person that I found in my database. I want to add this person to the data table. And now the thing is, I've chosen item as an item name in my for loop. It is very important that I add a parameter to this action that is actually called item. And this is of type data, because I fetched a set of persons from my database. In some cases, for example, if you fetch a list from an API, you would rather choose object as or maybe even a list of strings, depending on what kind of data that you're working with. But in my case, it's of type data, and actually the data format really here is a person. So what do I want to do with this person? Well, I want to add this person to my data table. So I'll just find data table right here. And then I have one thing that we haven't tried yet or one of the two things that we haven't tried yet, is to add a row to the data table. Just like this. Voila. So I can actually go in here and add a row to the data table. So let me just look here if everything is fine. So item, add person to data table. Let's hop back into this one. Okay. All right. So first of all, as usual, I select which data table that I want to add a row to. So that's my data table code right here. I want to come up with a code for a unique code for my row. And the thing is, because I'm using a piece of data from the database, this always has an identifier. So I can actually use this identifier as a unique ID. Now I can add some data. So again, I'll have to make up use the unique codes of the columns. So I have one that is hidden, remember the ID, and I choose the value for which I want to add to this row. So this is just ID. And then I have one that is not hidden, which is first name. And then in scope, I again choose which value that I want to add for this first name. So I pick item.payload.firstname. Then I add another one, last name. Again, I pick the value for which I want to put in this column, being last name. And then the last one, I want to add email. Again, I choose email from my scope. So let's test out our page right now. So we head back to our page, we hit the play button, and now we have a full list of persons. Now the ID is visible. Let's make it not visible again like earlier. So let's reload this page, and voila. So we have a full list of people here in my data table. I can start filtering it, so that's not a problem. I filter on every single field, so that's perfect. And I have paging. I can change the amount of items in my paging as well. So that's fine. So that's how we load dynamic data into our data table. And now what you can actually do is you can use this data table as being an overview of your data. And then when somebody clicks a row, you can redirect this user to a detail page of that certain data. So let's try this. So voila, go into the data table. And this data table actually has an on-click action for the data table. So let's add an action to this on-click action right here. Voila, the action is added. And as you can see, if we open up this action right here and we see the parameters, there are 3 parameters already automatically added to this action. And that happened because we chose to create a new action and add it to the on-click of this data table. And this data table on-click action, this actually requires to pass in a little bit of data. And that's why we need some parameters on the action. So we conveniently add it for you. And let's just write out the actions, the parameters that we get. And let's see what we can do with those actions. So let's write them out to the log. So first of all is the row code. Then we have maybe let's do it better. Let's do it like this: row code, row underscore code, column code, column underscore code, and then we have, I think it was row data, row underscore data. Let's add those placeholders in. Voila. So the first placeholder is row code. Row code. Voila. Then we have column code. Let's just copy paste it from here so we don't make any mistakes. And then the last one is row data. And let's see actually what these values contain, or what these parameters contain. So let us like reload it. And Alice Brown, let's click on Alice Brown right here. And let's see what's being written into the application log. So we have a row code, which is an ID. It's the ID of the row, or the code of the row. Remember that I've used the data ID as the code of the row. So if I look here and I can find 2 persons with this ID. So let me check if this makes sense. No, this is not the correct ID, but this one is Alice Brown, and that's actually the person that I clicked. So that's that. So we now know we get the row code. We also get the column code. I think I've clicked the last name. Let's maybe try clicking first name. So I click the first name row, and let's see. As you can see, the last or the last log message in my log, in my application log, tells me that I've clicked the column first name. So you can do something with that. And then last but not least is I get the complete row data that is being visualized and not visualized in case of ID for the record that I've clicked. So this contains ID. So that's good. So I can use this. So let's first of all get the ID from that that raw row data. So I can do two things. I can either use the column code, but that would be too easy, of course. Let's just say that we didn't put the ID as column code, as row code, and we now have to fetch the ID from the actual row data, being one of the columns which is not visible on my data table. So what I can do is I can have two approaches. So first of all, I change this row data to from free input to parameter input. Free input actually means that that anything can put into this parameter as a value, as long as it's an object. It doesn't matter which field this object has. The downside of this is that you won't be able to reason with the attributes of this object. You will only be able to reason with this object in its whole. And what I mean by this is I will not be able to, like, for example, do this. Because when I look for this here, first name, and I look in, I don't have the fields of whatever that is inside raw data, even when it contains a first name field attribute. So that's the downside of using free input. The upside is that's very simple to just send in an object and then maybe do a pass-through or something like that. So that's fine. The other possibility is that I create a data format for this, and then I choose the data format for my data structure actually. So that's another possibility, and it will work. And this will allow me to reason with first name, last name, email, stuff like that. Another possibility is that I don't create a data format and I just add the attributes right here through the form of parameters. So let's try this. I have a parameter input, and I can now add parameters to this parameter. So there's actually sub-parameters which will define the structure of my object. So the first one that I have is ID. The second one that I have is first name. And actually, let's just add last name as well, and that's that. I know I also have email, but let's not use it. I don't need it. Let's just use first name, last name, and identifier. So that is that. So if I now go back to here and I want to write out the first name, you'll see that row data just retrieved new attributes. So I can use first name like this. So let's try if this works. So we hit Alice Brown, or we click the record Alice Brown. And as you can see here, I am writing out the first name. So I have full control over the raw data, or the row data, is more to say. So voila, I can do anything that I want with it. If I now were to create a new page like this, let's call it person detail. Let's add a vertical list to this. Or maybe let's delete this vertical list and let's add a horizontal list again, like this. Let's get rid of any styling this horizontal list has. So I get rid of the background, get rid of the border. I'm gonna put it again at 100% width, and I'm gonna put it in the left corner, and then let's put it at 100% height as well. And inside this, I will add a vertical list like this. Okay, yes, I thought I had some padding, but maybe I hit the reset button for the padding. I think padding is okay. So let's put it again at growth number 1. So it takes up all the space that is left in the horizontal list. Let's add a title to this. Let's add a title to this one. So let's make this title first name, last name. And maybe we should do it like this. We should make it person dot payload dot last name, and then person dot payload dot first name. And let's try and get this to work. So let us now, let's get rid of this. This should not be authenticated as well. Let's also create a parameter for this page. Let's make it a type text and let's put it at ID. So the idea is that I just pass in the person identifier to this page. And then I fetch the person and then I'll feed it to this title. So I'll add another template parameter and I'll just say, okay, this one is of type data and its name is person and the data format to be used is person, like this. So then I can add an action, an onload action, which will execute every time the page is loaded. I can call this action fetch person info. Of course, this action can inherit the parameters of the template that it is bound to, and it knows that. So I can quickly choose to inherit the identifier parameter like this, and I can choose to fetch a data record by an ID. I'll do so, and the ID that I choose is the one that comes in through the parameter. I then select the data format and I call this found person, like this. And then I can choose to inject this found person into the parameter that I defined for my template. So I actually get the ID from the template. I use this ID to fetch a person from the database, and then I inject whatever person that I find as a value for one of the parameters of the template. And I can use set value of template parameter to do so. So the name of my parameter is person, and the value of this parameter will be found person. Right here. Now if I load up this page, this one right here. Okay, authentication is off. I'll just load up. We'll see nothing right now. Then we'll grab one person, maybe this identifier right here. So this one. I can just hit copy ID right here. And then I pass it as a query parameter in my URL. That should leave me with a person. So let's see why this is not completely working. And let's go on ahead and open up the... so as you can see, first name and last name are not in capital letters. So let us... the thing is, if you want to use anything from the payload of data in your database, then you'll have to exactly write the attributes as you created them. So I'll have to put in here first name and last name not being in capitals like this. So as you can see now, I have Alice Brown, and I can put other things on this page. So for example, let's put email address in here as well. So you can choose like another heading, or maybe make it smaller even, but let's just keep it at, you can even use text, but let's just keep it at title for now. So I use person, payload, email, like this. And then we'll have an email like that. And you can do all sorts of things. I can now start adding an image and start adding some extra data to my person. But let's not do that. That's not why I'm taping this video. I have my person detail. This will do fine for now. I want to go from here to here. So let's open up the action that is actually executed, and that was writing out the information from the data table, from the clicked row. And let us add a root function, which you can actually use to route or redirect the user to another page within your application. So all you have to do is select a template. In my case, this is person detail. And because this template has an identifier, I can add a value for, because this template has a parameter, I can add a value for that parameter. It has two parameters. I don't have to add a value for person because that person value parameter is being filled in by whatever we fetch from the database. But I do want to add a value for the ID parameter, and that's actually just row data.id that I want to add. Here I can choose to force the route even when the page is the same. That's not the case in my case, so I just leave it like this. And then I can even choose the target if I want to target the current tab of the browser, or if I want to open up a new tab. But I'm just going to leave it at self. That's the default value anyway. So that's that. And now let's click Bob Johnson, for example. And now we have Bob Johnson. And if we click on Dana Scully, we go to the page of Dana Scully. So that's how you create a master overview using the data table. And of course, you can do other stuff with this. Let's just add something to this vertical list as well. So maybe I can add an icon button, which will allow me to head, oh, that's a big icon button, but it will allow me to head back to the overview page once I hit it. So let's quickly style it a little bit like this. And then let's choose a certain icon for this button. So I choose an arrow, and it's an arrow to the left like this. Oh, this is not the arrow that I wanted. So let's pick another one. And let's pick this arrow, or maybe this arrow. That looks good. Yeah, that looks fine. So I can do it like this. And then if I hit this action right here, then I use the route function again. I use the route function, route to page, and then I simply head over to my data table page like this. If I now reload the Hank Hill page right here, I hit this one, I go just back to my data table page. So that's how it works. That's how you can do this. Now we haven't, there's one last thing that we haven't tried yet. There's one last part of the data table dynamic or functions that you can actually use, and that's the clear data table. So let's add another button to our overview page right here. Let's call this clear data table. Let's add an action to this button. And let's just call clear data table, or clear the rows of a data table like this. And all I have to do is select the data table that I want to clear. And now if we head back here, we should have another button right here, and then we can hit clear, and there's no more data in my data table, just like that. So that's everything that you can do with data tables at the moment in NoCode-X. If you want to use the data table and want to go and experiment with it, be my guest. If you have any ideas on how we can improve this, let us know through Discord. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and keep following us, and stay active within the Discord channel. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. So see you later. Bye.